I stared at the divorce papers on my desk, my hands trembling with a mixture of anger and disbelief. The words from Nathan's statement pierced my heart like a poisoned arrow. Wife neglects our marriage in pursuit of unproven scientific endeavors with questionable commercial viability. My name is Victoria, and at 32 years old, I never expected to be dismissed as scientifically delusional by my husband of 5 years, especially not while my biotech company was in the final stages of groundbreaking clinical trials for a revolutionary cancer treatment. The irony of his timing made my stomach churn with a bitter cocktail of rage and hurt. Through the glass walls of my San Francisco office, I watched Rebecca, my secretary, laughing at something on her phone. Her recent behavior had raised red flags, extended lunch breaks, hushed phone conversations, and an unusually keen interest in our confidential trial results. The sight of her new Hermes bag and Christian Louboutin heels sent ice down my spine as more pieces of this betrayal clicked into place. A notification on my laptop drew my attention back, another email from the acquisition team. The latest valuation was in $12 million for my biotech firm that had developed a targeted gene therapy for aggressive forms of breast cancer. I'd kept the trial results under wraps, not from secrecy, but because I'd learned during my Stanford research days that validated results speak louder than premature celebrations. Nathan, with his hedge fund background and Harvard Business School dropout status, had always sneered at my work as playing with test tubes. He never grasped the potential impact of our research, and truthfully, he never tried. "Your little science experiment," he'd say dismissively, even as leading oncologists began taking notice of our clinical results. Victoria, Rebecca's voice cut through my thoughts as she leaned into my office, designer perfume trailing behind her. Nathan called. "He's sending movers for his things this weekend." "Thank you, Rebecca," I replied, maintaining my professional composure despite the anger bubbling beneath. I couldn't help but notice her smug expression as she turned away, her wrist adorned with a Van Cleef & Arpels bracelet identical to the one Nathan's mother had given me when we first got married. I returned to my computer, accessing the secure server containing our trial data and proprietary research. Tomorrow's first priority would be revoking Rebecca's security clearance, standard procedure for someone I suspected would soon tender their resignation. In biotech, protecting intellectual property wasn't just about business, it was about safeguarding hope for countless patients counting on our breakthrough. The final divorce papers sat before me, awaiting my signature. Nathan wanted a swift conclusion, citing irreconcilable differences and my obsession with unproven scientific pursuits. He had no idea that while he plotted his departure, our Phase 3 clinical trials were showing unprecedented success rates. I lifted my pen, feeling an unexpected serenity settle over me. The latest lab results from our breast cancer trials had shown a 94% response rate. Sometimes the most powerful vindication comes not from words, but from undeniable results. 3 days later, I sat in Eleanor's pristine San Francisco office, finalizing both my divorce and the acquisition agreement with a leading pharmaceutical company. There was a certain poetry to it, dissolving a marriage built on superficial values while cementing a partnership that could save thousands of lives. "Miss Chin, you understand that by not contesting the divorce or disclosing the pending acquisition, Mr. Harrison will have no claim to your company's intellectual property or the proceeds from this sale?" Eleanor, my corporate attorney, asked, her experienced eyes studying me over her reading glasses. I nodded, recalling the evening 6 months ago when my suspicions first arose. Nathan had been working late at his hedge fund, while Rebecca had started probing about our trial protocols and investor relationships. I'd engaged a private investigator primarily to protect our research data. The photos of Nathan and Rebecca's intimate dinners were merely a sad confirmation of what I'd already suspected. "I understand completely," I replied, signing the papers with steady hands. Nathan made his choice believing I paused, quoting his words with a hint of irony, lost in scientific delusion. "I see no reason to correct his assumption about our cancer breakthrough." The acquisition team had been crystal clear, complete confidentiality until the deal closed. Our employees would soon learn not only about the acquisition but also about the generous retention packages I'd negotiated to protect our research team. Well, most of them would. My phone lit up with a message from our chief medical officer. Rebecca just resigned effective immediately. Claims she's pursuing a lucrative investment opportunity. Right on schedule, I murmured, catching Eleanor's questioning glance. Should we be worried? She asked. I shook my head. No, just another person choosing quick profits over meaningful work. I didn't mention that I'd already restricted her access to a monitored account tracking any attempts to access our trial data. In biotech, protecting intellectual property meant protecting patient hopes. Later that afternoon, I overheard two researchers discussing how Rebecca had been boasting about her revolutionary investment fund, allegedly a special healthcare technology portfolio promising triple-digit returns within months. I recognized the predatory gleam that had likely captivated Nathan. They deserved each other, both so blinded by greed that they couldn't recognize the true value of what we were building, a treatment that could give cancer patients their lives back. I returned to my computer, reviewing the final acquisition details. Let them chase their hollow dreams of instant wealth. I had lives to save and real innovation to deliver. The acquisition deal closed on a Thursday afternoon. Standing in our lab's break room, watching my research team celebrate with champagne, their eyes lighting up as I announced their enhanced compensation packages, I felt a deep sense of fulfillment, not just for the successful sale, but for creating something that could genuinely save lives. To Victoria. Adrian, our lead research scientist, raised his glass with pride. The best CEO who never bragged about developing a cancer treatment that could change medicine forever. The room filled with cheers and applause. I smiled, thinking how far removed this was from Nathan's obsession with quick wealth. He'd always chased the next big market tip or insider scheme, never grasping that real breakthroughs come from years of dedicated research and countless failed experiments. My phone lit up with a message from Eleanor, divorce finalized. Harrison didn't dispute any terms. Congratulations, you're single and your life-saving treatment is now backed by one of the world's largest pharmaceutical companies. Before I could reply, Ryan from Clinical Trials rushed over, his expression a mix of disbelief and concern. Victoria, you need to hear this, he said in a low voice. My contact at Goldman Sachs says Nathan's leveraging his entire fund portfolio for some groundbreaking biotech investment. He's betting everything on what Rebecca claims is privileged information about our cancer treatment protocol. I maintained a composed expression while digesting this news. Rebecca had never had access to our actual research data, she'd only seen the public-facing clinical trial summaries. But naturally, she wouldn't have shared that detail with Nathan. Interesting choice, I replied softly, sipping my champagne. I'm sure they've done their due diligence. Later that night, clearing out my office, I discovered a photo from last year's research symposium. Nathan was absorbed in his phone while I presented our preliminary trial results to a panel of oncologists. It captured our relationship perfectly. He had never truly engaged with the meaningful work we were doing, always searching for shortcuts to success. I placed the photo in recycling and gathered my research notes. Tomorrow would begin a new chapter integrating our treatment protocol with our acquiring company's global distribution network. I had a 5-year commitment to lead our expanded research division, with resources to explore even more promising cancer therapies. Walking to my car, I noticed a message from my investigator. FYI, RB purchased one-way tickets to Switzerland. Traveling alone. I didn't bother responding. Instead, I switched off my phone and drove to my new home in Pacific Heights, where I enjoyed a glass of wine on the terrace overlooking the San Francisco Bay. True success isn't measured in revenge, it's found in creating something that matters, while leaving others to face the natural consequences of their choices. 2 months after the acquisition, while reviewing our expanded clinical trials program, the first signs of Nathan and Rebecca's scheme began unraveling. I was in a meeting about launching our treatment in European hospitals when Olivia, my former clinical data coordinator, called urgently. Have you seen the headlines? She asked breathlessly. Nathan's fund is collapsing. There's a mob of desperate investors gathered outside his office. I opened the Wall Street Journal website. The images showed Nathan's prestigious financial district office surrounded by protesters wielding signs about medical fraud and stolen dreams. I recognized several faces, prominent physicians and hospital administrators who had trusted him over the years. They all invested in some sort of exclusive biotech fund, Olivia explained. Promises about revolutionary cancer treatment protocols and guaranteed FDA approvals. Does that sound familiar? I muted the call, my chest tightening. Rebecca had leveraged her position as my secretary to legitimize their scam. She must have convinced them that working for a leading biotech firm gave her insider knowledge about breakthrough cancer therapies. Thank you for telling me, I responded quietly, but I need to focus on our European medical trials now. After ending the call, I returned to our actual mission. Our cancer treatment was showing unprecedented success rates, with patients in remission far exceeding projections. I had a duty to them and to future patients to stay focused on real medical breakthroughs, not schemes from my past. Yet the magnitude of Nathan and Rebecca's deception proved impossible to overlook. Further revelations showed they had exploited not just Nathan's investor network but also desperate cancer patients and their families, all promised access to breakthrough treatments supposedly developed in my labs. Mrs. Harrison? I looked up to find an FBI agent at my door. It's Dr. Chin now, I corrected. How can I help? We're investigating a major healthcare fraud involving Rebecca Martinez and Nathan Harrison. Our records show Ms. Martinez worked here. I nodded, accessing her employment records. She was my secretary for 2 years, with strictly administrative access. She had no involvement with our clinical research or treatment protocols. The agent documented my responses about Rebecca's role. When did she leave? 2 months ago, just before my divorce finalized, I provided her termination paperwork. Everything was properly processed through HR. Are you aware that she and Mr. Harrison have disappeared with approximately $5.2 million, much of it from cancer patients and their families? I maintained my composure despite the wave of disgust. No, but it's not surprising. Rebecca showed unusual interest in our clinical trials, though she never had access to actual research data. She must have used that perceived connection to exploit vulnerable people. The agent studied me intently. You seem remarkably collected about this. I motioned toward our bustling research facility, where scientists were working on genuine medical breakthroughs. I'm running a legitimate biotech company that just sold for $12 million and is helping save lives globally. I can't afford to be distracted by people who chose to profit from others' desperation. The following weeks revealed the devastating scope of their deception. During my morning visit to a San Francisco medical conference, I overheard 2 of Nathan's former investors discussing their losses. He took everything our hospital's research fund, money raised by patient support groups, one doctor said, his voice heavy with guilt. Rebecca showed us their clinical trial data, promised miraculous recovery rates. We should have known better, his colleague replied bitterly. Just because she worked at a biotech company, we assumed. I silently gathered my presentation materials and left. Back in our labs, I had real work to pursue. Our treatment was showing unprecedented success rates, and I was interviewing oncologists for our new European Research Center. Real progress, built on genuine science. That afternoon, Eleanor called with developments. The FDA's Criminal Investigation Unit is involved, she reported. Nathan and Rebecca established fake research facilities in multiple countries. Current estimated losses exceed $8 million, much of it from cancer patients and medical charities. Have they been located? I asked, professional curiosity overriding personal interest. Their Swiss accounts were drained shortly after arrival. Last spotted at a private airport in Dubai, then vanished. Eleanor paused. The investigators need your statement about Rebecca's actual role in the company. I considered carefully. Forward them our HR documentation and previous testimony. Rebecca was a secretary with no access to our research. Any claims otherwise were pure fabrication. They uncovered some telling correspondence, Eleanor added. Nathan was boasting to investors about leaving his scientifically delusional wife right before launching this revolutionary cancer treatment fund. Quite the timing, I remarked dryly, recalling his divorce statement. Life has its own sense of justice. Now, I need to prepare for the oncology board. We're expanding our treatment to pediatric patients. Later, I toured our expanded research facility, watching my team at work. The acquisition had allowed us to triple our research staff, and our treatment protocols were advancing beyond our initial projections. In one lab, researchers were testing our therapy on aggressive breast cancers, in another, studying its potential applications for leukemia. My phone displayed a breaking news alert. Former hedge fund manager and biotech employee wanted in massive medical investment fraud. The article showed photos of Nathan and Rebecca in professional attire, promising miracle cures based on proprietary cancer treatment protocols. Adrian, my lead researcher, noticed the headline. Amazing, they thought they could fabricate clinical trial results, he commented. People see what they want to see, I replied, pocketing my phone, especially when hope is involved. Speaking of hope, Adrian smiled, our pediatric trial results just came in. Complete remission in 85% of cases. I nodded, focusing on what truly mattered. While Nathan and Rebecca had been selling false hope, we'd been creating real breakthroughs, treatments that were actually saving lives. That's what we're here for, I said. Let's get back to work. 6 months after the acquisition, I was presenting our breakthrough cancer treatment results at the World Oncology Congress in San Francisco when the full story exploded. The New England Journal of Medicine had published a detailed investigation into Nathan and Rebecca's fraud, revealing horrifying details previously unknown. During a break, I read through the article on my iPad. They had initiated their scheme as soon as our clinical trials showed promise. Rebecca had exploited her position to fabricate research data, splicing portions of our actual trial results with completely manufactured patient outcomes. Dr. Chen, a reporter from Medical Science Today, approached as I exited the conference hall. Would you comment on the Harrison-Martinez medical fraud, given your involvement? My involvement extends only to leading the legitimate biotech company whose research they attempted to counterfeit, I stated with professional composure. Our treatment is helping cancer patients achieve remission and giving hope to families. That's what I'm here to discuss. In my hotel suite, I found an urgent message from the FBI's healthcare fraud unit. They'd discovered evidence of Nathan attempting to breach our research database repeatedly after Rebecca's credentials were revoked, trying to steal actual clinical protocols to validate their scheme. Your security system successfully prevented any data theft, the agent noted, but we need your research team's assistance in tracing their network of fake medical clinics. I forwarded the request to our compliance department. While we'd cooperate fully with authorities, my priority remained elsewhere. Our treatment had just received accelerated FDA approval for expanded trials, and major cancer centers worldwide were requesting participation. My phone displayed a message from Eleanor, update, Nathan apprehended. Swiss authorities detained him trying to enter a cancer research conference with forged credentials. No trace of Rebecca or the stolen funds. I was composing a response when our chief medical officer appeared at my door. Pardon the interruption, but the pediatric oncology team has achieved remarkable results with the modified protocol. They're ready to present the data. Schedule the briefing, I said, setting aside my phone. Yesterday's deceptions could wait, today's breakthroughs couldn't. The next day's medical journals revealed the final chapter. Rebecca had vanished with virtually all the stolen funds, abandoning Nathan to face justice alone. His pathetic attempt to pose as a medical researcher had failed, and he now faced international prosecution for healthcare fraud. During my closing address at the Congress, I discussed the ethics of medical research and the sacred trust between healthcare providers and patients. Without referencing Nathan or Rebecca, I emphasized the fundamental truth: true medical innovation isn't about profit margins or empty promises, I told the assembled physicians and researchers. It's about saving lives and alleviating suffering. Success in medicine isn't measured in dollars, it's measured in the number of patients who get to go home to their families. The poetic justice wasn't lost on the medical community when our treatment received breakthrough therapy designation from the FDA the same day Nathan was extradited to face charges. While he had peddled false hope and fake cures, we had developed a genuine life-saving therapy. That evening, I received an update from the FDA's criminal division. They had identified several international shell clinics, but most of the stolen funds from desperate patients and families were gone. Rebecca remained unaccounted for, likely living off millions taken from those seeking hope. I closed my research files and turned to reviewing new trial protocols. Their story was ending in disgrace, but our mission to save lives was just beginning. 1 year later, I watched Nathan's sentencing from the back of the federal courthouse. At 37, he looked decades older, his arrogant demeanor shattered by the weight of his crimes. The judge's condemnation was absolute. "Mr. Harrison, you have pled guilty to multiple counts of healthcare fraud, wire fraud, and criminal conspiracy," she pronounced. "Your deliberate exploitation of desperate cancer patients and their families represents a particularly cruel form of fraud. The court sentences you to 15 years in federal prison." I left before they led him away. I had an oncology board meeting where we'd be presenting the expansion of our treatment to 100 additional hospitals worldwide. Our therapy had already achieved complete remission in 72% of previously untreatable cases, and our pediatric trials were showing even more promising results. The media called it a tale of hope and deception, contrasting our groundbreaking cancer treatment with Nathan and Rebecca's exploitation of vulnerable patients. While they had sold false hope to desperate families, we had developed a therapy that was genuinely saving lives. Rebecca remained at large, presumably living off money stolen from cancer patients and medical charities. Interpol had tracked her through high-end clinics in Switzerland and Singapore, but the trail had vanished. Nathan's frantic attempts to locate her only emphasized how completely she had used him. Driving to our San Francisco research center, I reflected on how different things might have been if Nathan had tried to understand the significance of our work instead of dismissing it as scientific delusion. But people focused on quick profits rarely appreciate the value of genuine scientific breakthrough. 2 weeks after Nathan's sentencing, I delivered the commencement address at Stanford Medical School. Looking at the passionate young faces before me, I recognized the same dedication to healing that had driven our research. "Real medical breakthroughs don't come from shortcuts," I told them. "They come from unwavering commitment to scientific truth. While there will always be those who exploit hope for profit, true healing comes from dedication, integrity, and the courage to pursue genuine innovation." After the ceremony, a young oncology graduate approached me. "I followed the story about your ex-husband and former secretary," she said. "It must be gratifying to see justice served." I considered this carefully. Actually, I've been too focused on saving lives to dwell on their fate. They made their choices, as I made mine. That evening, I received news from our European trials. Our treatment had achieved complete remission in a group of terminal patients who had exhausted all other options. Families who had lost hope were celebrating second chances. Another notification appeared. Authorities had located Nathan's final hidden account, a mere $67,000 in an offshore bank. Walking through our research facility, now encompassing 5 floors and employing over 300 scientists, I felt profound satisfaction. The company Nathan had mocked as my science project was now valued at $150 million and, more importantly, was saving lives that had been considered unsavable. Sometimes the greatest vindication isn't revenge, it's the quiet pride of knowing you've created something that genuinely matters while others pursued hollow schemes.